Hi, I'm Heather. Welcome back to my kitchen. Today I'm going to be showing you how to make a low-fat, low-calorie, super healthy ramen noodle soup with miso. Some of the ingredients I like to use are, I usually use Miracle Noodles. They, as you can see, have only 10 calories. Miso paste. One of the things I like to add, I switch off between wasabi, I usually use the powder, and gochujang. It's this Korean sauce. Oh my God, it is incredible. Even if you're not gonna use it for this, you need to buy it and keep it in your house. I put it on tater tots, all sorts of stuff. It's almost similar kind of consistency to ketchup, but it has this like really sweet, kind of hot. It's incredible. This is one I have. I got it on Amazon. It was like $4 and it is incredible. It just adds that little extra umami oomph to your food. So you have that. I also like to add ginger and I like to add curry. So I'm gonna be adding those to it today. And then as far as everything else that goes into it, you can kind of pick and choose what you want based on what you have in the house, based on how you're feeling. I always like to do some dried mushrooms in mine. I think it adds a little bit of extra flavor to it, and dried rather than fresh because it really, it concentrates the flavor. I also usually do a little bit of kelp into mine. A little bit goes a long way. It expands a lot, so just do a little tiny bit. I'll show you. I also like to add some edamame to mine just for that little extra starchiness. If you want some crunch, you can add some water chestnuts. I usually throw a couple in, not too many. I actually had celery that was, like I had said the other day, also about to go bad. So I was like, oh, okay, I'll put some celery in. It's just what I had in the house. It's not really a traditional thing to put in it, but it's not bad too. And when I was at the farmer's market, check out these green onions I found. Holy cow, they are gorgeous. So I'm gonna be adding one of these onions to my soup also. And that brings us to the rinsing stage. I forgot to mention proteins. I'm gonna do a marinated egg, a hard-boiled egg. I'll show you how to do that in a second. And also I'm gonna throw some shrimp in. You can add protein, you don't have to add protein. Sometimes people do tofu in it. I try to stay away from tofu even though I don't eat meat, just because it is very high in natural plant estrogens, which aren't great for women. They can cause breast cancer and things. But you can kind of just throw anything in. I usually try to do my proteins towards the end just because this takes a while to cook and you don't want them to get overcooked and hard. Okay, so now here we are at the noodle stage. These noodles, they have no calories basically because they're made out of cognac root, which is this root that's hard to digest, but I think they're great. They smell out of the bag kind of funky. That's normal. So what you have to do is, and it says on the bag, but I don't think people wash them as much as they really should. You really need to wash it. I put it in a sieve like that, and I flip it around so it really gets everything. And you do that for about a minute. And then while I'm doing my cutting the vegetables and stuff, I'll just let the water run over it in the sink. When you can't smell them anymore, they're okay. Turn the hose up, get it. Okay, so I'm back. I've chopped up the vegetables and put them in. It's the green onion and the celery in here. I did them kind of chunky because I like mine chunky, just to whatever consistency you like. Then you can pour in however many edamame you want or not. Just whatever you have in the house. Sometimes I use kale in there too. Sometimes I'll add spinach. Just whatever you have that you kind of want to eat and use. Like I said, the dried onions are great. Do a few of those. This, like I said, a little bit of this kelp goes a long way. You don't need a lot. I usually just do about this much. It expands to like 20 times its size. I'm not kidding. A little bit goes a long way. To rinse my hands between touching things. Then I'll add some curry powder. You can always add more to taste later. I'd like to do it before it's done boiling though. I'll taste it before it's done boiling just to make sure there's enough in it, because I like the bubbles kind of disperse it really nicely, more so than if you just sprinkle it on top and stir it, I think. Some ginger, some squirts of this. It just adds that little kick. Oh, I love it. Like I said, if you don't do this, you can use some wasabi, which works really nicely too. I've used paste, I've used powder. The powder I find it a little bit easier to control because I'm just a squirter, you know. Then I have my miso paste, so I will take a clean spoon. And I usually do like a nice hefty chunk. You don't need salt in this because miso is pretty salty in and of itself, so you don't really need salt in there. I'm just gonna grab this to clean. Scoop it off the spoon with, just to make sure you get it all. Using a piece of celery. And there you have it. That's how you season it. Here's what it looks like in the pot. And then I'm gonna add some water. If you don't add enough water, that's okay. You can always just keep track of it and add some more later. It's gonna boil down, and a lot of the mushrooms and the kelp and stuff will absorb some of the water too, so you will probably have to add a little bit more later. I just play by ear. I'm kind of one of those play by ear chefs here. So I'm going to start, and I'm going to move it over to the stove now. Light it on high. Add my noodles. Sometimes I like to chop them just a little because they're kind of long. Add my noodles in. The consistency of these noodles is much better if you cook them for a bit than if you don't. They're fantastic, and I actually really like them. You'll get mixed reviews on them. I really like them, but they're better when they're cooked, for sure. Even though you technically don't really need to cook them, they're definitely better when you do. Okay, and now that that's boiling, you can just give it a few stirs. Just distribute everything nice and evenly. And then turn the heat down. Put a cap on it. And just let it simmer for an hour, hour and a half, however long. If the water gets low, you can just add a little bit more. It should be fine. Okay, now back to the protein. For my lazy version of my marinated egg, I have an egg that I've boiled. I peel it. Ooh, I didn't do a very good job of that. After I peel it, I like to rinse it just to get all the little egg things off, because I'm not the best peeler. So I have a peeled egg here. Slice it in half the long way. And then you have a bowl, it could be any size bowl. I do this the lazy way, it's super easy. You can add other things to it if you want. I just take some soy sauce, some more of that gochujang, love, 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 because it's the best thing on the planet and I'm absolutely obsessed. Stir it together. Dump the egg in. Oh, you know what sometimes I also like to add? I forgot. Sesame oil. I've got some right here. Yeah. Some toasted sesame oil. You can put some of that in. I like to do it to a point where the eggs are just covered. I'll show you in a sec. Just covered, and then they'll be like that on top. And then I just stick that in the fridge while the rest of that's cooking. Okay, now I'm gonna take these eggs and the shrimp, put them in the refrigerator while I take a little stroll outside and come back. And when I'm back, my soup should be done. And now just make sure that's on the lowest possible heat and covered. And you can take a break, walk around, go enjoy yourself. Welcome back. So I have returned from my walk and did a few other things. It's been about an hour and a half, and as you can see, I've brought my soup back up to a boil, and I'm gonna add my shrimp. Pop those in there and let them continue to boil. And as you can see here, my eggs have turned out pretty nicely. Okay, so it's been about a minute and a half, maybe 2 minutes tops. Shrimp cook very fast. See, they are now opaque and it is ready to turn off and your soup is done. Okay, so now it comes to plating it. I always like to use festive bowls. My mom always taught me, it's all about the presentation. If your food's ugly looking, no one's gonna wanna eat it. And even if I'm just cooking for myself, I still want a pretty presentation. So I have a nice little themed bowl that I'm gonna serve myself in. And I just scoop out. I've pushed the shrimp to the side so I can kind of put them on top so it makes a pretty presentation, because like I said, even though it's just for me, I like it to look pretty. Scoop it all out. Get the shrimps on top. And then you have the eggs. They turned out beautifully. I just spilled them all over the stove and I tried to show you a minute ago, but here's what they are like. They came out nice and marinated. And so depending on your salt tolerance, you can just dump the whole thing in. It's fairly salty, that's a warning. If you don't like salt, don't do it. If you do, I like salt, go for it. Here's what they look like. They marinated in the fridge for, I'd say the same amount of time that this cooks, about an hour and a half. I'm gonna pour some of this in, just because I like the salt and it had all that gochujang sauce in it. Yum, 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 yum. Anyway, that is it. Here's how it turned out. Oops, sorry. Now I've got my beautiful, delicious Miracle Noodle, super low calorie, low fat ramen.